You know, they're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you will do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. Normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think, John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Yes. What is up? What is up, MCR family? Another daily edition of the show, live on YouTube, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Obviously, podcast form, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Man, it is going to be a crazy show. It's going to be a long show. There is really a lot to get to. We have about 6 fight cards to discuss this weekend. That alone is a lot to cover, and then also because we were off yesterday, and of course that's usually our preview show. All of that fight cards, all that preview is now on today's show, so we're going to cover that first, boxing, MMA, and then go into the breaking news. So obviously we're going to talk about Crawford, Benavidez, World Boxing Super Series, the return of Aloyan Tete, Andrew Tabiti, and probably 2 fights they should win rather easily. Of course, we're going to get to them when we do. Lewis Ritson back on DAZN, plus the return of Angel Acosta. And obviously, Bellator has 2 different cards this weekend, one on Friday and one on Saturday, both on DAZN and Paramount Network. And obviously, the breaking news of Manny Pacquiao signing to Al Haymon and going to fight Adrian Broner in January, potentially on Fox. So that alone is insane. On top of that, obviously the UFC news, such as Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson 2 being announced and official, Khabib Nurmagomedov going after the UFC and threatening to leave if his teammate gets kicked out of the UFC, and obviously Dustin Poirier, news that happened yesterday, Dustin Poirier getting injured and off of UFC 230, and now Nate Diaz officially off of UFC 230. News all over the place. We have good news, bad news, and, of course, some interesting fights to break down. Some of them are not the greatest. Some of them are pretty good. And this is Mixed Combat Radio. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe, call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. I am Matt, the hipster hunter. Let's go. Like, it's here. I'm relatively excited for this weekend. And quickly shout out to everyone in the chat: Louis, Bayside, Lloyd Jacob, UK Rob, Unbiased Boxing, Aaron Munoz, and everyone else in the chat. I'm going to call in Rubitsky as well, our unofficial Puerto Rican correspondent. I'm semi-excited for Terence Crawford, obviously coming back. Him coming off the Jeff Horn fight, which was relatively dominant while exciting, in my opinion. It still leaves a little bit to be needed from Terence Crawford. Now, Jose Benavidez doesn't really fill out that need an opponent that we want. We want Terence Crawford to fight one of the top 5 other guys in the division, the Danny Garcias, Sean Porters, Keith Thurmans, Earl Spence of the world, and he's not. He's fighting Jose Benavidez Jr., who once upon a time was destined to be the next guy, one of the youngest Golden Gloves champions. At the time, was the youngest person assigned to Top Rank. And obviously he was shot, went through a insane recovery and rehab, and now is back. And, even though that is a great story and Jose Benavidez is still a good boxer, I think this was a little bit of a case of, we had a guy that was destined to be in this position, and Terence Crawford really wasn't. And then Crawford just out of, pure will and determination and skill, put himself in this position. And I don't think Jose Benavidez can obviously counter that, just in terms of, like momentum. Momentum at this point is not in Jose Benavidez's favor. But let's, briefly talk about the fight, because obviously there was so much news to get to. I'm not going to break down each fight individually as much as I would probably want to, because we do have A, a lot of fights, and B, a ton of news to get to. But Terence Crawford Benavidez is pretty a simple matchup in my opinion. You have both fighters offensively gifted, in my opinion. You have one that is a supreme athlete, one that really isn't, and one that is extremely gifted defensively, and one that isn't. And those obviously favor Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford has better defense, better athlete, on top of probably being able to match him offensively for whatever Benavidez can bring. Benavidez, while a guy that has good combination work, can go to the body pretty well, good power, he's a guy that leaves himself completely open to counter shots. And from what we've seen of Terence Crawford against guys like Victor Posto, guys that were offensively gifted, heavy-handed punchers with good combination work, and he was a little more fundamental, they just can't really catch Terence Crawford. While he's countering them, pestering them, keeping a jab in their face. I expect Terence Crawford to really shine here. Look almost otherworldly, to be quite honest. Because Benavidez is going to come out with insane pressure. Both guys don't like each other. Both guys are about that life. So I expect Benavidez to come out of the gate really with a high intensity, and Terence Crawford just look truly sublime. We're going to see true levels here on Saturday, in my opinion, on ESPN. This is not ESPN Plus for anyone listening. This is on regular ESPN. Crawford, I think, is going to get, we really don't know how tough Benavidez is in a fight. Not because he hasn't really been in tough fights, but he hasn't been in this level of a fight. And plus, with the layoff, the injury, and how he really hasn't looked the same athletically since he's come back, it's questionable if we see a stoppage here or this go decision. I think we see a late fight stoppage, 10-12. Probably gonna be the time where Terence Crawford turns it up and gets him out of there. But then again, Bayside Boxing, both guys have been shot. Yes, I saw somebody on Twitter say this kind of funny line, saying, I think this is the first fight. I think it was David Grisham. I think that's Grissom is the guy's name on Twitter, the journalist, and he said this. I think this is the case that both fighters in a main event have been shot while not really being shot fighters. If get the double entendre, and I thought that was funny. Yes, both guys have been shot. Both guys are about that life, and if you don't understand that phrase, look up on Urban Dictionary. But Crawford is just another level of boxer, and probably several levels above Benavidez. Benavidez is going to be caught, winging punches, missing, and getting caught with huge counters in return. And this should be a relatively easy and dominant fight for Terence Crawford, to be quite honest. Shakur Stevenson versus some guy. Shakur Stevenson should have a really good fight here. The only thing I want to see from Shakur Stevenson, like any other young prospect, obviously with opponents that he should beat, is I want to see improvements. And one thing I've noticed from Shakur Stevenson is that he doesn't really either know how to lead or wants to lead. While I think he does have the power and combination work to be the leader in the fight, to be the guy that's the aggressor walking forward. I know he likes to be on the back foot and box, but I think with these level of opponents, there's a time when he should switch it up and get his opponent out of there, and he doesn't. He stays in that gear. So I truly believe Shakur Stevenson should win this one handedly, just like he has in all of his other fights. But I want to see improvements. I want to see other things in his arsenal that I have not really seen. Because everything else, he checks off the box. Athlete, insane talent in terms of skill. and just natural IQ in the boxing game. And plus, he's really young. He's only 19, 20 years old. He has such a long career ahead of him that I'm okay with these level opponents at this point. Take the long road. But I want to see improvement. I want to see you shift gears when you need to, and you haven't really done that as of recent. Carlos Adames on the card as well against Joshua Conley. Carlos Adames should win this one, rather easily as well. Michaela Mayer also on the card. Again, these prospects are in relatively easy fights, but I just want to see improvements. I want to see Adames really try to use his power a little bit more, go to the body a little bit more. Things I've seen headhunt a little bit too much. Same with Heather Hardy. I've seen her headhunt. I want to see more body work from both of them. But good overall card, on ESPN in a relatively light weekend. Even though we have 6 cards to discuss, it's not a bunch of marquee events. Terence Crawford Benavidez is probably still the biggest event, other than maybe the Bellator event, which we'll get to, obviously. Next on the docket, on DAZN, Zolan Tete versus Mikhail Aloyan, Andrew Stabidi versus Ruslan Fafer. Double header on DAZN. Obviously, you can see the whole card on DAZN as well. This, to me, is 2 matchups that should relatively be easy. Even though Mikhail Aloyan is 4-0, undefeated, highly touted amateur. Ruslan Fafer, undefeated fighter as well. They really don't have that elite level from what I've seen. Ruslan Fafer is more of that trimmed down cruiserweight version of a poor man's Adam Wanaki. And Louis, yes, I am discussing that. Don't worry about that. I will discuss that. That's later on the show. That's the news of the day. Aloyan is much more gifted offensively than Fafer. I think he has more power. However, is really rudimentary brawler style of a boxer. I've seen him literally square up to his opponent, shoulder to shoulder, and start throwing haymakers with no technique and no defense. Zolan Tete is not that guy to partake in that fight. Zolan Tete is going to be on the outside working the jab, work to explode in with a combination and get out. And plus being a southpaw and Aloyan having atrocious defense, Tete should score an easy knockout here, in my opinion. Aloyan is not up to this level. He clearly got this position because there's obvious monetary connections between, RCC boxing promotions and obviously Sunderland. There seems to be some sort of connection between these Russian promotions and World Boxing Super Series. Just seems quite obvious. Andrew Stabidi, similar case. I think he's just an overall well-rounded fighter, the better athlete, better fighter, better boxer, more power. And Fafer is just not that guy. No defense as well. And similar overall from a lot of what we're talking about. A trend I've seen this weekend is a lot of offensively gifted fighters. Even Fafer, when his combination work is pretty good. Similar to like Adam Wanaki. Adam Wanaki can throw really good combinations, but everything else that seems to be not up to par. Fafer, Aloyan, even Jose Benavidez in some capacity. Gifted fighters offensively, but defensively is their kryptonite. It's a aspect of the fight game they just do not have on par with their opponents. Tete Tabidi should get Aloyan and Fafer out of here whenever they want, to be quite honest. They both should be relatively quick fights. Both under 6 rounds. Fafer just walks forward with earmuffs on, and that's his defensive work. Aloyan doesn't even put up his hands to his head. He doesn't put up a guard. And Tete is just the extremely faster opponent in terms of hand speed and also has legitimate power. This should be an easy performance for both of them on this DAZN card in Russia. Moving on, Angel Tito Acosta from Puerto Rico against Abraham Rodriguez on Facebook Watch on Saturday night. This one kind of snuck up on me, to be honest. Also, Rashidi Ellis, one of the most underrated prospects in the game. It sucks that he is seemingly buried on Golden Boy's stable when he is truly an elite prospect that needs a lot of shine. Like, he needs a lot of promotional work and push behind him. Lord Jacob saying, no, not to be. I don't know what you're talking about. Tabiti and I said Tabiti and Tete should win easily. I don't know really Abraham Rodriguez that well. To be quite honest, he's only really fought in Mexico, and I always question fighters that just have only fought in Mexico and come up and really doesn't have any of that knockout power. Tito Costa is a world-level fighter. Even though he has that loss to Kose Tanaka, that's Kose Tanaka, who at the age of 22, 23 years old, might be a pound-for-pound fighter and is a 3-divisional champion. So Tito Costa definitely is a legit talent. He needs better fights than this, in my opinion. I know he's still sort of on the comeback trail from Kose Tanaka and that loss, and that was sort of a tough loss for him. But he is a gifted fighter with insane power. I would really like to see him fight better opponents than Abraham Rodriguez, but I understand the game. Moving on, the Lewis Ritson card on DAZN and Sky Sports. Lewis Ritson versus Francisco Pantera. Lewis Ritson, if you don't know him, you should. He may not be the elite guy to come out of the UK, but he might be their all-action guy. I haven't seen a fighter put on that much exciting fights back to back to back as Lewis Ritson. Like, every fight is good. Every fight's fun. He has great knockout power. Pantera is a guy that doesn't take pressure well. Lewis Ritson should be in his element here and get a emphatic knockout. But again, he's a guy to sort of watch just because he produces great fights. He may not be a guy to watch because he's going to be the next Floyd Mayweather, or the next Roy Jones, or the next whatever, but he'll be the next fun fighter. The next Ruslan Provodnikov, potentially. And let's not forget how fun that Provodnikov run was. As you can see, one of my dogs get up right there. Yeah, lay down. What are you doing? Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by my dogs today. 2 of them. Joshua Buatsi also on the card. David Allen on the card. Jose Burt on the card. Anthony Fowler, a.k.a. Robbie Hearn's favorite fighter. So I know everyone's pretty happy over there in the Robbie Hearns household that it is a Anthony Fowler fight week. A lot of good prospects on that card, even though they are relatively matched up well. Buatsi, talking about guys that have high ceilings, Buatsi has that high ceiling. So definitely keep an eye out for his fight. It's going to be on DAZN and Sky Sports. Moving over to the MMA cards of the weekend and then to the news. And because of the amount of news, I'm really not going to take that many calls till after we get done with everything. But again, if you want to call in, get in the queue right now. 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. If you are international, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com to get that free international call-in link. All the information is below on the screen. Let's move on to the Bellator 207 card on DAZN and Paramount Network on Friday. Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader in the semifinal heavyweight Grand Prix for Bellator. Also on the card, Roy Nelson versus Sergey Kharitonov. Kevin Ferguson Jr., a.k.a. Kimbo Slice's son, R.I.P. Kimbo Slice. Also on the card, Lorenz Larkin. This is one of those cards that I really could care less about, but it's on a Friday, so I probably have nothing better to do than to watch it. But Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader should be a fun fight, I guess. It depends on if Ryan Bader is just so dominant in his wrestling that he decides to take it down and just stay there, either in guard or in half guard, and just throw ground and pound enough to keep it there. Roy Nelson versus Kharitonov, I do not want to see that, to be quite honest. Kevin Ferguson Jr. is a legit prospect. He's pretty good, even though he has a loss on record. He's only 3-1. He was facing some good prospects as well early on in his career. And Lorenz Larkin, even though he's been up and down post UFC, is still a top 20, 25 welterweight in the world. maybe top 30. And he could easily come in here and start fighting some of these guys that fall out of the welterweight Grand Prix as well. Saturday night, Fedor Emelianenko versus Chael Sonnen, another heavyweight semifinal. Gonna be interesting. It's two old guys fighting. It is what it is. I'm actually really excited for the Ben Henderson Saeed Awad fight. If Awad can keep it standing, he might piece up Ben Henderson, knock him out, and we might see actually like the retirement of Ben Henderson when he was like the first big free agent to leave the UFC, and that whole free agent hysteria, only 2 years ago. That'd be interesting to see. Chet Congo versus Timothy Johnson. Heavyweight MMA, never know what can happen there. Alexander Shlemenko versus Anatoly Tukov. Anytime Alexander Shlemenko fights, you should watch it because he's one of those all-action fun fighters. But that is it for the fight cards of the weekend. Let's get to the news. Because we do have quite a bit of news to get to. But let's start with boxing, then work our way to MMA. News that came out literally maybe a couple hours ago, and news that is, I'm not going to say it's shocking the boxing world, because it's not. Just from my comments on my Twitter feed, no one's really shocked by it that much. And everyone's pretty ecstatic about it or liking it. So, but as I teased the topic enough, Manny Pacquiao joins Al Heyman, Adrian Broner, joins Al Heyman to fight Adrian Broner and then Floyd Mayweather. Yes, this is coming by way of World Boxing News and actually Manny Pacquiao Promotions itself. I was pretty shocked about this. I know not everyone is, but I was. I was one of the people guessing and assuming that Manny Pacquiao would take probably the easier route in Amir Khan, use his sort of star power as leverage for the zone to get a huge contract, and waste his last bit of his career fighting some UK fighters on the zone and such. Maybe a rematch with Jesse Vargas. Hell, Thomas Dolan may fight. Anything is possible, right? But that didn't happen. The Amir Khan fight on the zone, not a possibility. Did not happen. Now we're getting Manny Pacquiao versus Adrian Broner, rumored to be on Fox in January. This is shocking. If it's not shocked to you, I don't know. Maybe nothing shocks you. I don't know. But this is surprising. Not because I didn't see a path of Manny Pacquiao fighting Floyd Mayweather again. Because this is obviously a very clear path and contracted path, it seems. I expected more of the free agent route, where he just maybe fights Floyd Mayweather next year sort of thing. Takes a tune-up as a free agent, be Manny Pacquiao Promotions, fight in Asia somewhere. But he's not. He's signing to Al Heyman, the biggest figure in the sport still, and he's going to fight Adrian Broner on Fox. Again, rumored, that Fox part. Everything else is pretty official per Manny Pacquiao's own promotional company and World Boxing News. But the Fox fight, that is massive. Similar to how I think Top Rank was very smart in putting Manny Pacquiao versus Jeff Horn as their sort of flagship inaugural event when they re-signed to ESPN. This is obviously much bigger than that. A, Fox is much bigger, and B, Adrian Broner is vastly bigger than Jeff Horn. Louis saying Broner Pacquiao is a dead matchup. It is maybe for people like you, Louis, and people like me. Like, I'll be honest, it's a fight that intrigues me slightly. Like, I'll be honest, like, Adrian Broner, I think, can put on a competitive fight against Manny Pacquiao, and who knows. But I understand that probably a lot of hardcores are like, it's whatever. However, for the casual fans on Fox, and again, this is a Fox that won't have the UFC anymore, that has WWE and now PBC, they're going to push the hell out of this. Adrian Broner is going to be all up and down. What Shannon Sharp and what is it? What's their name on that show? I don't God, why am I forgetting his name? Skip Bayless. Whatever their show's name. Come on. Adrian Broner is going to be on that show 24/7 leading into this fight. It's going to do massive numbers if it's on Big Fox. And it would be a good jumpstart to PBC and Fox deal. It's a masterstroke of a move, really. And even though I think we care probably less about Floyd Mayweather rematch, I think the Adrian Broner fight is at least a little more competitive. Floyd Mayweather is not. So that one doesn't lead too much interest to me, and that's obviously going to be pay-per-view. Anthony Walker saying, get ready for some cringe-worthy promotion. Yeah, Broner with the racism is going to be. I mean, Mayweather did it. I mean, what did Mayweather say? Shout out to Anthony Walker on Showdog.com. I know he already had his show today, or he will have his show today on Showdog at their YouTube channel. So go check that out with Jason Burgos. No, I think I'm getting his name wrong. If I got his name wrong, I apologize. But that's a great show. They're getting better equipment too, so I can't wait to see how it shapes up. But Anthony, you're right. I mean, obviously, the Manny Pacquiao 8 years of saga with Floyd Mayweather led to a lot of racial, I was going to say like innuendos, but it wasn't innuendos. Like Mayweather called him like his something little yellow something. I'm vaguely remembering this. I know I'm paraphrasing, but he called him yellow something. Talked about him eating dogs. Like it is what it is. Anthony Walker at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Yep, Jason Burgos. Yes, go check out Anthony's show on Showdog.com. I'm definitely going to go troll the chat 100%. And thank you for scheduling it after my show, Anthony, because last week, actually it's probably maybe the week before, you had your show on the same time as mine, and I was heated. Because I wanted to troll your shit, and I couldn't. But anyways, digressing. Manny Pacquiao signed to Al Heyman. It's big news. It's another huge chess piece off the board. With the DAZN, Bob Arum, ESPN, and obviously the now Fox and PBC venture, they're all vying for chess pieces. In this three-dimensional chess game of boxing right now with all these networks. And Manny Pacquiao is a massive piece still. It may not be to some of us hardcores, but let's be honest, us hardcores do not drive the needle for what these networks look for. So, masterstroke by Al Heyman. Manny Pacquiao, still a top 10 welterweight, let's be honest. I mean, him beating Lucas Batista in the fashion he did still showed he had some left in the tank. And Adrian Broner, even though he had a draw against Jesse Vargas, has looked just up and down as of late, and obviously has his own issues out of the ring, he still every once in a while can turn it up. And I think against Manny Pacquiao, he's going to turn it up a little bit. And it's going to be a fun fight. More fun than I think we're going to probably expect. Because Adrian Broner doesn't have the footwork to really get out of Manny Pacquiao's combinations. But can Broner counter him on the inside? That would be interesting. Or catch him on the way on the inside. All fascinating things to think about, I think, going forward. Especially, again, as narratives will be played to promote this fight. And probably more narratives should be played about how that fight would be actually a fun, competitive fight, more so than Mayweather's, old protege fighting Manny Pacquiao for a chance to fight Floyd Mayweather. That, while we'll capture the casuals, I think for us hardcores, we actually focus on actual technical aspects of that matchup, and it is somewhat fascinating. But moving on, let's get down to the Joe Saunders. New information coming out today. There might have been some more that has come out, but I do doubt. I think I have everything. So Andrade versus Katsun Dokwa is now for the full WBO title. Joe Saunders has vacated his title. It's weird. And on top of that, Frank Warren has come out and said they will file a lawsuit against the Massachusetts State Athletic Commission because, to be honest, they might have a case. Massachusetts follows WADA, specifically in their rules and regulations, similar to the BBOC. And even though this fight contract had WADA in it, that might not pertain directly to regulation and licensing. I don't know the particulars. I'm going to try to contact people like Eric McCracken and more combat sports lawyers about this to get a little bit more of a developed and more intellectual, opinion about this potential case. But it seems like they might have a slight case. I don't think it will ultimately work out, to be quite honest. I think because he signed a contract for Demetrius Andrade that would be in Massachusetts, and that contract stated VADA testing, they might revert to, hey, you fell back. That is what your contract stated. That supersedes our rules and regulations. They might say that. I don't know the particulars of it at this point, but it's going to get a little bit more heated. On top of that, the WBO president has stated that he's been thinking and recommending a Billy Joe Saunders suspension for 6 months. Warren has stated that Billy Joe Saunders will not fight till this lawsuit and everything is figured out. It might be more advantageous just to eat the lawsuit and move on. Even though Billy Joe Saunders isn't Canelo Alvarez has sort of ate the lawsuit and moved on. Did 1 million+ pay-per-view buys, and is now a unified boxing champion in the middleweight division. So he might want to just think about sort of accepting the losses that he has right now, because in the court of public opinion, he won't win. I don't know about the actual court will he win, but in the court of public opinion, he won't win. So none of this is going to make it better. 6 months, you come back, April, June next year. Is that the worst thing in the world? No, but also it's, again, using, when I talked about this with Mitty the other day, Coach Mitty, one of our good Patreon members, we can use cases like Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders as more of a microscopic sort of a look at PD regulation and the pitfalls of it, the differences between different organizations, and how there is such confusion, not only between the fighters, but between promoters, networks, everyone. There is such conflicting regulation and also just overall loopholes in the system that it leads to cases like Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders and stuff. And I believe that the fans, because the media does especially boxing media, MMA media does a far better job about this than boxing media. But the media does a really bad job of educating the fans. So the fans blanket every one of these cases the same. Same with David Benavidez. I remember seeing a bunch of people online hating on David Benavidez when he should have never been tested for cocaine. But he was tested on Nevada. And there's the difference. If he just got WADA testing or USADA testing, or just commission testing, out of competition, he wouldn't have been tested for that. At least he shouldn't have. Rob, that is funny. It is what it is. It is what it is. I know some people have a lot more heated opinions about that. I just don't. I think Billy Joe Saunders, just like Canelo, just like a lot of people, are a victim of a shitty system. And the system is what we should be more upset about, not these individual fighters. But moving on to some UFC news. Wow. Khabib Nurmagomedov threatens to leave the UFC if teammate is cut for involvement in brawl. And since Anthony is here, I got to pull out the dramatic music for this reading of Khabib's official Instagram page. I would like to address at UFC. Why didn't you fire anyone when their team attacked the bus and injured a couple of people? They could have killed someone there. Why no one says anything about insulting my homeland, religion, nation, and family? Why do you have to punish my team when both teams fought? If you say that I started it, then I do not agree. I finished what he had started. In any case, punish me. At Zabrat Tukagov has nothing to do with it. If you think I'll keep silent, then you are mistaken. You canceled Zaburov's fight, and you want to dismiss him just because he hit Conor? Don't forget it was Conor who had hit my another brother first. Just check the video. If you decide to fire him, you know that you'll lose me too. We never give up on our brothers in Russia. I will go to the end for my brother. If you still decide to fire him, don't forget to send me my broken contract. Otherwise, I'll break it myself. And one more thing. You can keep my money that you are withholding. You are pretty busy with that. I hope it won't get stuck in your throat. Oh, God. We have defended our honor, and this is the most important thing. We intend to go to the end. Hashtag brothers. Oh, God. Man, this is interesting. I have a lot of thoughts about this. A lot, and some are conflicting. I'll be honest. This is new, like in terms of breaking news today. I need more time to really have a well-rounded opinion about it. But this, to me, let's say worst case scenario, the UFC doesn't give in to Khabib's threats, and they do just fire him. They make Tony Ferguson versus Conor McGregor for the interim belt. That does 1.5 million pay-per-view buys, and they go about their day. Right? Like, could Khabib get, BJ penned or Randy Couture in this situation? Obviously, different situations, but I would say similar level of drawing power in a way for the organization. Like BJ Penn, when he left for contract disputes, same with Randy Couture, they were at the height of their game sometimes. At that time, I should say. Khabib is at the height of his game right now, and he's talking about walking away. And yeah, in theory, he could go fight in Bellator or ACB or KSW and, make money and fight, people off the street and be fine. He's a star in Russia and a star in Eastern Europe. He can make a living over there. Absolutely. But it does hurt his legacy. I mean, greatly so. Theoretically, if they were to BJ Penn him and Randy Couture him, especially the BJ Penn scenario, BJ Penn had a really thriving MMA, community at the time to fall back on. There was different promotions doing different stuff at the time that he could definitely go fall back on and make money and actually produce great fights. I had somebody on Twitter actually compare this to Fedor Emelianenko, how Khabib can just do what Fedor did and fight outside the UFC forever. And I point out how that's a really bad comparison. Because when Fedor was reigning outside the UFC, the best heavyweights were not in the UFC. They were outside of it. So he could make a great career and make a great legacy. There's a reason Fedor has never been in the UFC, and yet we still call him probably the greatest heavyweight of all time and probably one of the top 3 or 4, maybe 5 fighters of all time. I mean, he's never fought in the UFC because he fought the best heavyweights. Khabib cannot do that outside the UFC. He cannot fight the best lightweights, the best welterweights, the best featherweights, whoever he decides to fight in a catchweight bout to make it, happen. There's no one out there for him to do that. Michael Chandler is not that guy. Brett Primus is not that guy. And by the way, they're fighting again, I think at the Bellator Hawaii event. But Khabib can't do that. Now Anthony says they'll give in. And he's right. Of course they're going to do that. Because Khabib not only, I think, has that sort of pull within the company that guys like BJ Penn and Randy Couture did, he probably has more than that. And I feel like that's safe to assume here, but I'm not going to assume it because Khabib is not the A side in the biggest pay-per-view buy rate in UFC history and the 3rd biggest pay-per-view buy rate in all of combat sports history. He's not the A side there, so it's hard to really be 100% certain that he has that pull. He has enough pull where the UFC has to relent due to his star power. Could the UFC just say, man, screw Russia. Like, we're a U.S. company anyways. We just signed the ESPN. Like, again, we have Conor, the A side. Do they need Khabib? I don't know if they have that internal discussion. I think just because Khabib is a part of that event, the fact that he did 2.5 million pay-per-view buys, I truly believe they're going to relent. That's just a little bit too big of an event, in my opinion. And plus, Khabib versus Conor too. Khabib versus all these guys makes money. It really does. And the UFC, I mean, there's obvious security issues with Tukayev versus Artem Lobov, for example. But it's still fights that they could easily promote, and they have probably no issue actually promoting them in the way that we might not like. Anthony Collin saying the man literally has a country behind him that the UFC is trying to break into, plus all the connections with politics and other fighters. Yeah, they've been trying to break into Russia, but do they need Russia? Like, think about this right now. Let's say they never have a Russian card. Let's say they never go into Russia again. That one UFC Moscow event is the only event ever. They get rid of Khabib. You think in 10 years from now, they're going to be hurting? Not having that market? Not being able to go to that country and have events there? I don't think that. I truly don't. Just being honest. I really don't see massive negative ramifications if either thing happens. That's the funny part with this story, is that if the UFC just says, okay, fuck you, Khabib, you're gone, nothing really negative happens. They move on. Bottom line is not really hurt, in my opinion. Maybe some really missed opportunities, obviously, some missed huge fights. We all know that. But the bottom line does not really hurt. And same if they keep Khabib. I don't think the bottom line is drastically improved. So Khabib's in this weird scenario, while obviously being a part of the biggest event in UFC history, he may not be that guy that was a part of it. You know what I mean? That made it that way. He may be a part of it. Same like Triple G and Canelo. Triple G, Canelo, a massive fight. But is Triple G really that guy? Where he can go to ESPN or go to any promoter or a network and say, I want this much. No, he can't. Canelo can. There's a difference there. Same with Conor and Khabib. Conor can go to any network, any promoter, and demand what he wants. And he'll probably get it. Why? Because it's Conor McGregor. He is the second biggest pay-per-view star of all time. The guy has sold over 13 million pay-per-view units in his very short career thus far. Khabib is just getting to that level potentially. Just an interesting situation here. I don't know which one's going to call the other's bluff first, but it's going to be interesting. Khabib is not the guy where he's playing here. The UFC will have to not punish Tukayev and let him fight. Allow Zabria to be back in. Obviously, for disclaimer, because Khabib claimed that the UFC were withholding his money, the commission is. That is not the UFC. The commission's withholding his money until he actually gets his fine, suspension, and they will release what's left of it. But again, sort of the long short of it, Khabib threatening to leave the UFC if his teammates are not brought back into the company. Who will sort of call the other one's bluff first? Who will play chicken? Who will sort of pull the car, out of that sight or out of that line and get out of danger? Because, again, I think that the possible ramifications are minor, to be quite honest. And I think either party could stick to their guns and just, leave all the cards on the table and go, in my opinion. Moving on, and sort of in connection to it, though this one I'm thinking like it's just Nate Diaz being Nate Diaz. But Nate Diaz going on Twitter and saying, at Dana White, please let Khabib's dumbass friend stay in the UFC. Fire me. It would be better this way. I think it's more fair that way.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
Yes, Eddie. Nathan Diaz has 100% been smoking something. And plus, Nate Diaz is an interesting guy. I would love to see like a full out like psych evaluation of the Diaz brothers, because obviously they have some mental stuff. Like, let's be honest. And Nate Diaz went from fighting Dustin Poirier, being on top of the world, to being upstaged by the UFC, his own promoter, and Conor McGregor at his press conference, basically, to demanding the fight be a main event and, be made a vacant title fight, for that to be denied. His opponent to leave due to an injury, him be off the card. I think he is just like Nick, like they're guys that they don't like this. Like, they do it for money. And if he feels like, hey, I don't like this enough, he'll go do a seminar for some weed company or a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seminar, and he'll make some money. He'll make some cash, and I think he'll be fine. These are two guys that came from sort of lower economic status. They really have not got the lavish cars, the houses. They don't have that sort of lifestyle. So, does he need the money? No. Does he want the money? Probably. And then I think he's just being, Nate Diaz and jumping on, as he says, Khabib's whole, claim or threatening to leave the UFC as a way to sort of be Nate Diaz. I don't have that many sort of deep thoughts about this, other than it's just another Nate Diaz situation. Like, this is Nate Diaz being Nate Diaz. I'm going to keep saying his name over and over again because that's all you can say about this tweet. Moving on, breaking news, I think it was yesterday. Jon Jones with Alexander Gustafsson announced for UFC 232. Yes, I'm hyped. The return of the GOAT, Jon Jones, and probably a rematch that, if it doesn't happen now, I feel like its expiration date truly hits. Especially with Gustafsson, I feel like he's close to retiring, to be quite honest. And Jon Jones is, quite frankly, looking for bigger fights than Alexander Gustafsson. But it's a good fight, and allegedly, or at least what everyone's saying, is this is going to be for the light heavyweight belt. So them stripping Daniel Cormier seems to be 100%, or maybe 99% official. Really bad move by them, but it is what it is. I don't understand why strip DC. Like, just make this for an interim belt for Jon Jones, Gustafsson too, and move on. The UFC loves interim belts. This is crazy. Ruby's gonna say, Matt, where's Max Holloway? He's fighting at UFC 231. With the new co-main event of Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the vacant women's flyweight belt. That obviously got moved off. Cesaro Eubanks, just for those that want to know, she got pulled off of, that title fight and huge career-changing fight at a 5-3 record, and now she's fighting Roxanne Modafferi at UFC 230. Contact Project Spearhead. Contact Leslie Smith. Another great example of that. If there were set standards in the UFC, these situations would not happen. Though, in the long short of it, probably the right decision business-wise to make Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Just being honest. Though I know Anthony might disagree with that if he ever called in. Just saying.
I want smoke!
Just saying. Moving on. I talked about Dustin Poirier being off of UFC 230. That was breaking news yesterday. But yeah, that really sucks. Kevin Lee versus Iaquinta 2 to headline UFC on Fox 31, the last UFC Fox event. The end of an era, guys. The end of the era. I was at the very first one live. It was great. My boy JDS knocked out Cain Velasquez. It was a fantastic moment. And now my boy Kevin Lee is about to knock out Iaquinta in the rematch. Cannot wait for that. What else? I believe that is it for news. Call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. I'm going to cover some little news as we get some callers in. If you want to call in internationally, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com. email me. I'll send you a free call-in link. But quickly, little news as you guys call in. Sergio Pettis moves up to bantamweight to fight Rob Font at that UFC on Fox 31 event. I actually really like this fight. I'm not too hyped on Sergio Pettis moving up to bantamweight, but I know he does cut a lot of weight. So if it's purely due to him wanting to cut less weight, I'm happy about it. If it's because he got really discouraged because the Formiga loss, I'm not too happy about it, to be quite honest. I feel like he is truly probably better at 125 than 135, to be quite honest. What else? I did mention Brett Primus versus Michael Chandler 2 will headline Bellator Salute the Troops event. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, since we have no callers, I'm going to head out of here because I am starving. Go check out Anthony Walker and Jason Burgos on SureDog.com's YouTube channel. I'll probably be there listening and shitting on them. And I'll keep yelling for Anthony to get a better mic. Just saying. And plus, I told Anthony he can come use my equipment if he wanted to. We live in the same city. But anyways, digressing. I hope everyone has a great day. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow, live as always on YouTube, podcast form, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Drop that review on iTunes. Patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio helps support the show financially. I am Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Hipsters here. Haters beware. Be back tomorrow. Peace.